Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where yesterday Kathleen Kennedy proved she can get along with not just one director, but two, as Rian Johnson, along with J.J. Abrams, is going to do repeat business in a galaxy far, far away. Now, if you want to be cynical, you could say that she only did this to show extreme confidence in Episode 8 on the eve of its release. We talk about this as being a strategy from Hollywood all the time. Oh, we're so excited here at the studio that we've already greenlit a sequel or this kind of movie, etc., etc. We've signed a huge deal with this talent because we love them so much based on what we've seen and you have not. And that's the point. We haven't seen Rian Johnson's Star Wars, so it's a little hard to get super excited about this because we don't know if we like it. But, you know, how much of a confidence boost does Star Wars need, right? The movies so far have done tremendously well, and there is intense interest in them. And the tickets sure sold out fast as soon as they went online. So perhaps Kathleen Kennedy genuinely is that excited about what Rian Johnson has to offer her, especially because they gave him amazing creative control with Episode 8, as we've come to learn from the Vanity Fair coverage, when they were like, guess what, J.J. Abrams didn't think this through, right? I mean, he didn't even do an outline for the new trilogy, which seems ridiculous to me. And apparently the Star Wars writing team, which Kathleen Kennedy's like, that's where all the women are, they didn't do it either. And so they said, when Rian Johnson showed up, they said, do whatever you want. And he was like, okay. And I guess they liked what he did. Why do they even have a writing team then, if, you know, they don't keep this stuff on the rails? But maybe it's fabulous. I do think that the trailers have looked interesting so far, right? And I guess Rian Johnson also, by the way, is happy to make himself do Star Wars for the rest of his life. It's a pretty cushy gig, right? I mean, if you have to do one thing for the rest of your life, why not Star Wars? George Lucas had a good time doing it until he didn't. But then he got a huge payday out of it, right? And he still likes to weigh in occasionally and say, and sniff disdainfully and say, that's not what I would have done. And sometimes we're like, what would you have done, George? Because I don't think we like this either. All right. And so as for what he's going to do is he's going to do a new trilogy, Rian Johnson, but he's only guaranteed to direct the first one, both for audiences and for himself, right? So he shouldn't get too excited, and I guess neither should we. But he's going to map out the new trilogy. But the wrinkle is that they're saying it's not a part of the Skywalker saga. It's, you know, which are the episodes. That, by the way, is quite revealing about probably what's going on with Rey. Unless, you know, Luke Skywalker and General Leia's involvement makes it technically the Skywalker story. But then how do you continue from there, right? Whenever there's an episode in the title, it's got to be about the Skywalker family. Although Kylo Ren is a Skywalker, so that counts as well. So this is going to be an offshoot trilogy. And to invest 3 movies in something that's totally new, because they're like, oh, full of new characters, seems like an unnecessary gamble to me. Why not make the first movie, and then if people loves it, be like, okay, you know, it's unusually of a situation like Rogue One, where you obviously can't make a sequel. But boy, did I respect them for doing that. That was a great movie. I loved Rogue One. But anyway, the other reason I think it's weird to greenlight a trilogy of new characters is that so far, clearly audiences have responded best to the old characters, right? Even with the new movies. Han Solo, General Leia, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader in Rogue One. You know, the ending of Rogue One in particular, that was what made that movie. That and the space aerial battles were just the coolest thing I've ever seen, pretty much. And then even Chewie. You know, his return. So audiences, they're like, okay, I mean, I'm curious, how do you guys feel? I mean, the new characters are nice and all, but I think that what really gets us excited is the old characters. I mean, come on, they have a whole Han Solo origin movie coming up with the return of Lando, etc. You know, that, and everybody wants an Obi-Wan movie. And on that note, if Rian Johnson were maybe, say, making an Obi-Wan Kenobi trilogy, well, then I would be totally down for it. And maybe he meets a bunch of new characters. I'm fine with that. But I would love them to do that. I don't understand why this is not, I mean, they said they're working on it now, but I don't understand why this isn't moving forward at a faster pace. I mean, Ewan McGregor wants to do it. He's very nice towards Star Wars. You know, sometimes an actor will be like, whoa, that was a period of my life that's over. I don't want to be known as just that. Like, look at how Daniel Craig, you know, the abusive relationship that Daniel Craig has with James Bond. But Ewan McGregor never has anything but nice things to say about being involved with Star Wars. He'll talk about it whenever anybody asks him. He never gets tired of it. And he's also very friendly with Disney. He was in Beauty and the Beast. He's the upcoming adult Christopher Robin in their Winnie the Pooh movie, live-action Winnie the Pooh movie. So I don't understand why he's not making an Obi-Wan movie. But maybe they're gonna make it up to him with an Obi-Wan trilogy. I hope that's the case. Then everybody would go nuts. And hopefully The Last Jedi is very good. I mean, yeah, The Last Jedi is very good, and we're all like, yes, Rian Johnson is amazing. We should sign him on for multiple movies. But it's a very vague report, which is why it didn't get its own episode. But we'll keep an eye on this as it develops and after we see The Last Jedi. Now, speaking of things that didn't get their own episode, I couldn't do one about the Black Panther posters that debuted yesterday because I just didn't think there was enough in them. They debuted 11 character posters, and I think they were just way too close up. You know, there wasn't anything really to get a feel for the characters or any clues to the story. They didn't even put cool borders around them to just show like maybe a little bit more about the character. I thought the posters were actually very poorly thought out. I love character posters, like the Beauty and the Beast character posters were amazing, and they were motion posters no less. But I think that, for instance, speaking of The Last Jedi, I think their character posters are poor. I think just slapping a character on a poster and being like, hey, look, they got their own poster, is not really the way to go. I think it should be something that looks absolutely beautiful and has some depth to it. I mean, I saw some coverage saying, oh, the new Black Panther posters show off their amazing costumes. And I was like, no, really? I mean, you can see like maybe like what's around the neck to some degree. And I even thought that the little slogans they put at the bottom, you know, how they all kind of related to the movie and also to T'Challa, Black Panther. I didn't think that was, you know, there was really nothing to discuss. You know, you were like, oh, that looks nice. But I did think of something. There is one thing to discuss, which is why I included it here today. One thing that struck me looking at the posters, and that's that out of 11 character posters, there are 4 for female characters. You have Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia. By the way, she tweeted this morning that she was in I think an Italian or maybe UK magazine, European magazine, and she was very upset that they'd actually edited out her curly hair to give her a straight, you know, buzz cut, because that was what she said they felt was the European ideal of beauty. And I thought that was absolutely amazing. And for those of you who don't know, when you go and you take a photo for a magazine, you have no say in how they Photoshop it. You know, you have no choice. You don't get to pick which one they'd use, and you don't get to, you know, you have no say or control over what they do to it. You take the photo and it's theirs. It seems ridiculous. That would be how the system works, but it does. And so to do that to Lupita Nyong'o, I mean, I thought she always had a shaved head, but apparently it's just getting edited down that way because people, you know, editors make the decision that it doesn't look good. And I think that's horrible. I'm glad she tweeted it out, although, you know, I guess that's the point of social media. I mean, Lupita Nyong'o, I mean, there's a risk that somebody else wouldn't want her on their cover as a result, but I think this is pretty darn insulting and somebody needs to talk about it. So anyway, Lupita Nyong'o has a poster for Nakia, Danai Gurira as Okoye, Letitia Wright as Shuri, who I think is going to be one of my favorite characters, and Angela Bassett as Ramonda, obviously T'Challa's mother and the Queen of Wakanda. Now, this is the most female character posters they've ever had for any superhero movie, and I think that's pretty darn exciting. And even Wonder Woman. And when it comes to female characters in a superhero movie, this ties with Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman had Hippolyta, Antiope, and Etta Candy, as well as, obviously, Wonder Woman. But I think this is very exciting. And these characters aren't just Dora Milaje. It's not like, oh, we have the Dora Milaje in the movie, so we have a bunch of female characters. Only one of, well, I think Lupita also serves with the Dora Milaje because she does seem to have that uniform. But she has an expanded role. But still, you know, only half of them are associated with the Dora Milaje. So I think that's very, very exciting. And I think it's very appropriate for the movie because of the strength of women in particular in the African American community, because of the strong history of single mothers. I think that's changing, thankfully, but it's a big part of the history of the community and a huge influence in how the community has been shaped, you know, who the leaders are, etc. And I think that's very astute and clever of Ryan Coogler, both from a social commentary perspective and from appealing to the audience perspective. And I'm very curious to see how it plays out, not just in the movie, but how audiences receive it. So I think that's fabulous and quite fitting that that would be the movie that would do this because, again, as I said, of that history with the community. So I think that's fabulous. Now, speaking of women, the TV renaissance has given a lot of actors a new lease on their careers, right? So we had Matthew McConaughey, perhaps is the most famous, Reese Witherspoon, most recent, and I'm very excited to see that Ellen Page might be up next. We'll see how the Netflix's Umbrella Academy works out. Yes, they're adapting the Dark Horse comic written by Gerard Way, the singer-musician, into what's basically an artistic, crazy musical, you know, musician version, like what a musician would dream up of the X-Men. And of course, Ellen Page got her big break playing Kitty Pryde in Bryan Singer's X-Men movies. She never was a particularly good fit with that role, I think, but I think that she's a very good fit with this. She has a striking look, and I think she's still a very good actress. I saw Flatliners recently, and Flatliners actually was not bad, and she was a big part of why it was not bad. A lot of good acting in that movie, and particularly from Ellen Page. So I think this sounds pretty darn good. Great material, great match with the material. But what I find odd about it is that it's so similar to the comic book that Mark Millar is putting out for Netflix, which I'm sure they're floating out as a potential show, and that's The Magic Order. By the way, Mark Millar is teasing hard an announcement next week about Kick-Ass and Hit Girl, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, I'm just surprised that Netflix would pursue a non-Millar comic book property like The Umbrella Academy. Maybe they'd already gone so far down the pipeline that they were like, we can't turn back now. But still, and especially because The Magic Order seems so similar to that. I mean, if Mark Millar was like, this is what I want to do, I'd be like, you can't do that because I'm already doing The Umbrella Academy. And I continue to really be confounded by the fact that Netflix, in their flood of content approach, has little care of protecting their investments or who they're investing in. It's really a gladiator's arena. They're like the Grandmaster in Thor Ragnarok. They're like, I don't care who wins, as long as someone does win and we put on a good show. So that's not so great for the fighters. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day, and I have a viewer question which is going to circle back to Rian Johnson. And this is from Vivek Mystery. And Vivek says, question, Grace, with all the hype behind Rian Johnson, what is all the hype behind Rian Johnson? People love him so much, but Looper and Brick were just okay. Well, those are matters of opinion. I mean, some people like them quite a bit, but we'll get into that. But Vivek says he doesn't produce or write much and has only had a handful of features. So why do people have so much faith in his work and this new trilogy? Thanks, Vivek from Maryland. Ah, fantastic. Hello. Hello, fellow East Coaster. Well, I think, first of all, having not made a lot of movies is a benefit to Rian Johnson, because you can always imagine that if he had the opportunity to make more, they'd be fabulous, right? But he's only made 3, and he's only 2 for 3, because Brothers Bloom, which everyone conveniently forgets, only has a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes, and everyone forgets it, because it wasn't particularly good. But he, of course, made Brick, which has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm bringing the Rotten Tomatoes numbers in here because you can't argue with those, right? I mean, that's the number, and when you have a movie like Looper, which got a 93, that's pretty darn nice. So he has these good numbers to back him up. And he also has directed quite a bit of television. He did a lot of episodes of Breaking Bad. That's a nice pedigree. And also HBO's short-lived show, Looking, about, it was kind of like a gay Sex in the City. And that's not as highly regarded as Breaking Bad, but still, it's HBO, it's a niche show. I think that it makes Rian Johnson look good. And I also think that he has a Nolan-esque fan base. I think because he's actually quite similar to Nolan in his appeal and his storytelling. And that same fan base is very vocal in the fanboy community. They can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. And so the studio loves the extra layer of security of already having them inclined to be on the side of the picture that said talent makes, right? Christopher Nolan or now Rian Johnson. And both of them have this philosophical intellectualism to their work. And I say philosophical because, like Nolan, I think that neither one of them have answers to the questions that they're asking in their projects. And you don't have to share, you don't have to spoon feed, what your movie's about to people. But I feel that in a work of structured fiction, the author should have the answers. I think otherwise the work is incomplete. And it's also, I think, cheating. It's weak storytelling. As I've said before, it's like, hey, you finish this, and then I'm going to claim credit for it. And it's like, but you didn't do the work. And I had, I kind of made it work, but it would, I like a puzzle that really comes together, right? Not like, I guess it's, kind of floating around there and you can decide what you like. I'm not a fan of that personally, but obviously Nolan's movies do quite well these days, and we'll see how Rian Johnson's do. I think, again, episode 8 looks pretty darn good from the trailers. We'll see if it's good, and I did enjoy Nolan's The Dark Knight, and he did make me question reality for a couple of days after seeing Inception, and you can't argue with that kind of a result, right? Even though I didn't find the film particularly entertaining. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Vivek's viewer question. And on that note, I'd be particularly interested why some of you like Rian Johnson and why you have faith in his work, but there has been a lot of work to be seen. So again, write your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you can check out some more episodes right now.